18 says there was none left but the tribe of Judah. This is several generations after King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba and their only son Menelik and the 12,000, that stone which was cut out of the mountain. We explained that previously in another one of our video teachings and tutorials and essays dealing with AOD, or the Ancient of Days, speaking about the stone that was cut out of the mountain, and the mountain being the scriptural language referring to a kingdom. There was that stone that was cut without hands. In other words, it was the will of Yahweh. So there was already a remnant, you understand, a remnant of Israel. Now we're speaking about the nation of Israel. We're speaking about this mountain now which was removed. El Elohe Israel, he brought the most fierce and the most sophisticated army in the land and in that known world in ancient times upon Israel. Do you know who this army was? This army was none other than the Assyrians. The Assyrians are the same ones who persecuted under their divergent name and groups of folks, the Hyksos, who persecuted the Dekik Israel, the Bani Israel, when they were in Egypt. That's the king that did not know Joseph. It was not an Egyptian or a Hamite, but it was Assyrians who, according to the Table of Nations, are Shemites. So it was fellow Semites. You know, and people have this deceptive idea that to be a Semite means you're an Israelite, but yet according to the scriptures the Edomites were Semites as well. The Assyrians were Semites, but who took in the Semitic Israelites? It was the Egyptians, Hamites, it was the Ethiopians, and Cushites. So this is what we mean when we say that the Beta Israel, the Falashas of the West, the so-called black Jews and Hebrew Israelites, have been misinformed. You understand? And they've been lying. You understand? Or at least at best telling half-truths to the people. But now's the time for the half of the story that hasn't been told to be told. Now, the Assyrians, let's touch on the Assyrians, Semites, persecuting Israelites, Semites, Semite on Semite violence, had established their own empire while the 12 tribes of Israel were still wandering in the wilderness. So while the Dekik Israel were in the wilderness, while there was a whole generation for 40 years, you understand, disobedient generation perishing in the wilderness with new clothes and new shoes on. Note that as well. Their shoes did not wear out, their clothing did not wear out. I'm making this likeness to point out to y'all your experience as Negroes in the Americas and the Caribbean the same way. They had good clothes. Their clothes wasn't the problem. It was their hearts and their minds that was the problem. But while they were wandering in the wilderness, the Assyrians were establishing an empire. Since Solomon had passed on to what's known as the higher life, you understand, nearly 2 centuries before, the 12 tribes of Israel were divided into 2, living in different locations. They were already divided. You understand, by time Solomon had passed on. So we're talking about 200 years later, right? Israel, the tribes other than Yehuda, the tribes other than the tribe of Judah, went north, and Judah went south, more towards that location of Solomon's firstborn son, Menelik, and the 12,000 of the firstborn of the Bani Israel that returned, that went to Ethiopia with Menelik, the son of King Solomon, the Queen of Sheba, to renew the kingdom of David. So Judah, you understand, the tribe of Judah, you understand, also went south, while the northern 10 tribes went north. Another key feature is that the 10 tribes of Israel who were removed and destroyed out of Yahweh's sight, it's very important to note that they were against the monarchy of David, that they never held allegiance to the monarchy of David. They held to their own monarchies and even to Saul and Saul's children, but they never held to the monarchy of David, with whom El Elohe Israel, with whom Yahweh had made a covenant. This is key. This is key to even understanding who's who to this day, because the true Judahites and true Relawian, the true regenerated Israelites in this day and time in spirit and in truth, they hold to the monarchy of King David, which is to hold to Kedamawi Haile Selassie, the King of Kings of Ethiopia. So we find these similarities and patterns. These patterns keep recurring. That the Israelites turned their back on David, the Judahites held firm to David, and then we have Moa Anbesazem Negeda Yehuda, the conquering line of the tribe of Judah, Kedamawi Haile Selassie, and the elect, the Rastafari in this day and time. Now, because of this division among Israel in the north, the 10 tribes in the north, and Judah, Yehuda in the south, this made the seizure of land basically no problem. This made the seizure of land very little problem for the Assyrians. Now, the only ones that were spared were the tribe of Judah, Yehuda, which we will call Falasha. Falasha, as we are Falasha. This is why the so-called Beta Israel of Ethiopia, they don't want to be known as Falasha, because they know that that title for them is not really correct and true. That we, you understand, who went beyond the rivers of Ethiopia from East Africa to West Africa, you understand, end up in the slave trade, you understand, were exiled from our land, that we are the true Falashas, the so-called African-American Falashas, and the West Indian so-called Falasha, or the Rastafari, the Ethiopian Hebrew Falashas. We are the real Falashas, not them. But historically speaking, the ones who were spared this particular destruction was the tribe of Judah, because they had kept the covenant. This is the main reason why Judah, both in the east and Judah in the west, were spared, because to a greater extent they had kept the covenant. Which covenant was that? See, some, even like Dr. York in some of his books, he mentions the same factual information, but what he ignores is the real covenant of David, the renewing of the kingdom of David in Ethiopia that Kedamawi Haile Selassie of Ethiopia represents. He mocks that, you understand, and basically he has gotten taken out of the way as well. You understand, because he's not being obedient to the facts while claiming to present the facts to our people, but have given them more truth, but still not giving them the half of the story that hasn't been told. So he's been giving them half truths, and our people half truths as well. The covenant that the tribe of Yehuda, the Falashas, kept to, the Beta Israel kept to, was the covenant, you understand, with David, you understand, and with the Davidic dynasty, or with Zion. So when we say Zion, we are referring to the Davidic household. All right, we could call the Ethiopian imperial royal family, we the elect Rastafari. This is how you should be able to understand it in this day and time. But in time, the tribe of Yehuda, Judah, came under persecution, and they had to flee for survival. You find that in 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 30 and verse 31. As time went on, they eventually settled in what was known as Abyssinia by the Arabs and those Semites, or Ethiopia by the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Coptics. And to this present day, many of their descendants are still called Falashas or Falashian. Now, these people, speaking about the Falashas, you understand, why were they called Falashas? Well, the word Felase comes from Ge'ez or Ethiopic. It means to be exiled. You know what I'm saying? To mean to be exiled or exiled from your land because of what happened in old Israel and what has happened to us in the trans-Ethiopic Ocean Holocaust, or the trans-Ethiopic Ocean slave trade, with us ending up here in the Western Hemisphere. And if you check historical records and books from the Europeans, since you don't want to accept what your own says, check out what the European says, you'll find a lot of the records of the blacks that came over here to the Western Hemisphere in the slavery days refers to them as Ethiopians.